This is Debate Me Here. Riots broke out today in Minneapolis after police shot a man after pulling him over for, I believe, a traffic violation. This video is not really about the actual shooting or even necessarily the riots themselves. What we're going to be covering is a common theme on this channel is media bias. So I'm going to start with what actually happened. Then we're going to take a look at a little bit of the riots. And then I'm going to make my prediction about how it's going to be covered or not be covered. And we're going to go and confirm that by looking in mainstream media, left wing, right wing. So let's get right into it. If you're new to the channel, click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Let's begin.
Okay. Oh.
Hold up.
More flashbang grenades.
It's just loud. It's just loud. It's okay. You're all right. You're all right.
Police in Minneapolis unleashed tear gas and rubber bullets on protesters Sunday, hours after a police officer fatally shot a man only 10 miles away from where George Floyd was killed in police custody last year, chanting Black Lives Matter and climbing on top of police cars. A witness told Reuters that later, police fired rubber bullets.
So right away, I noticed how this looks. I wasn't going to really do an analysis on this particular channel, The Sun, but look at this shot. It's like a silhouette. This is kind of a nice, for lack of a better word, artsy type of photo. So it almost gives me the impression of sort of glamorizing this. That's the impression that I get anyway. I'm not saying that they are doing that, but that's how I feel about it. I also see a lot of, I will give them props for starting. They start the video with what appears to be some riots going on. So that's something typically you wouldn't see on MSNBC or CNN. They would want to start with some protest footage. So they want to start with, the police here. They want to focus on the police being the bad guy. So they'll show police like maybe firing stuff, and they'll show like, here's a, innocent lady just, standing up for her rights, First Amendment rights, whatever. That's the way it would. They definitely. I don't expect this to be on MSNBC. You don't want to. They wouldn't start with this, right? That goes against the narrative. If they have shots like this, they'll put it at the end. Definitely won't be thumbnails. So it's kind of interesting. But still, again, some of these shots look very sort of dramatic. They're still shots. The nice silhouette, and it looks like there's even a filter. See how it's like dark here? It's like a vignette type of effect. I don't know if that's happening automatically because of the lens that they're using or that was done for artistic effect, but that's the way I look at it. Even this shot. Like, this is something I could see used on a newspaper. Like, that's the main photo, or in a magazine article talking about protests or whatever. So, again, I get a very artistic vibe from this. I don't know. And then they cut to, someone on the ground. So, I'm not judging this particular channel, but this is what I usually expect from mainstream media. They'd like to show the protesters in a positive light. They're the heroes. It's really entertainment, really, right? It's like a movie. You gotta have a good guy and a bad guy. So the protesters are good guys. So you gotta show a guy on the ground, hit in the head, blah, blah, blah. You want to show the bad guys, the police officers firing at them and doing bad things to them. And anything that makes the protesters look bad or rioters, you want to downplay that. Don't show that. Focus mainly on showing them from a positive light. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here.
Man wounded and bleeding from the head. Protesters later gathered outside the police department, surrounded by hundreds of officers who set off flashbangs and sprayed chemical irritants at the crowd. In a statement, Brooklyn Center Police said officers had pulled over a man for a traffic violation just before 2 p.m. and found he had an outstanding arrest warrant. As police tried to arrest him, the driver re-entered his car before an officer shot him. The man then drove off before striking another vehicle and dying at the scene.
So keep in mind the way that right-wing or left-wing propaganda works, right? You have a story with a series of details. A happened, then B happened, then C happened, then D happened. Now, what you do is, if A and B support the narrative that you want to promote for profit, right? Because this is something that your audience will react the most to, then you focus, or in real aggressive propaganda, you may do only those things. So you focus on A and B, or you only report on A and B, and then you just completely omit C and D, or you really downplay it. Downplaying it, that's the way a propagandist like Tim Pool, that's the way he would do it. He would hedge himself. So if he wants to focus on victim blaming, which is probably the angle that he would go based on this, and I'm not taking any judgment in terms of who was right or wrong. That's not the focus here. The focus is on media and how they cover it and bias and propaganda, right? So the guy could have, it could have been totally warranted, the shooting, or not warranted. I'm not taking that into consideration. I'm just talking about, and here's the thing, regardless of whether he's guilty or not, you should cover this incident factually. If A, B, C, and D happen, report on A, B, C, and D equally, right? If the guy really screwed up, the guy who got killed, talk about that. If the crowd really screwed up in terms of rioting and violence, talk about that. If protesters are there, just fighting for justice or whatever, you talk about that, right? You cover everything. You don't focus on something, hide the other thing to steer your audience in a certain direction. But that's what typically happens. So, right-wing media, I'm pretty sure will focus on victim blaming. So they're going to focus on the guy and he didn't follow instructions and blah, blah, blah. And then they'll focus on, and this is truthful, to take an inch of truth and go a mile with it. They'll focus on perhaps if the mainstream media does what I expect them to do, which is try to profit from this, try to stoke the flames of the racial divide and racism again, and only 10 miles and a black man shot, right? So right-wing media will focus on that. Victim blaming and also critiquing the left-wing media if they try to sensationalize it and essentially race bait. For example, this may have nothing to do with race. There may be no evidence to support there's anything racist happening here, but somebody like MSNBC will probably take it there. So right-wing like Crowder, like Tim Pool, Ben Shapiro may focus on that. So like a Tim Pool is really good at this stuff. So he'll probably say, well, the cop could have used a stun gun, right? Spend 15 minutes talking about the victim and how he sucks, and the right and left-wing media and how they suck, and then spend 10 seconds saying, well, he could have probably used a stun gun, right? So like, hey, but I said you could use a stun gun. I did call out the cop, like, you know what I mean? Like, so he's protected. No matter what you say, he's got an angle. If you're right wing, then you love him victim blaming. You love him calling out left wing media. If you're on the other side and you critique him, it's kind of like, hey, well, I did call out the cops, right? So let's take a look at a little bit of the aftermath.
Beefed up police officers, uniforms.
They got riot police out. There's trash on the ground.
Remaining present at an unlawful assembly.
So just a quick comment on a little bit of the politics here. So this will be a little bit interesting because Donald Trump was insane, right? He wanted to take us to an authoritarian communist party, China or Russia or something like that, in terms of, how he wanted to deal with stuff like this. Men in vans, unmarked vans, snatching people up off the street, that kind of stuff, right? Insane. So Joe Biden, of course, in my view, for political reasons, called that out. This is not American, blah, 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 right? But he probably doesn't really care about that stuff necessarily. So the thing is, now that he's president, if he's too tough, he looks like a hypocrite. So does he not deal with this adequately for political reasons, right? Does he softball this just to contrast himself with Trump? Now, there's a way to deal with this, to be forceful with this, but yet respect the rights and values of the Constitution. But for difficult situations, that might require a little bit of intelligence, strategic intelligence. Joe Biden is not exactly one that I put a lot of faith in. So when you're not really clever, that's where you run into sort of brute force tactics. And that's where it's going to sort of potentially head you in the direction of Donald Trump. So that might be a little bit of a conflict there. So I'm not sure how Joe Biden is gonna deal with this. But my guess is not very well.
System. So something in the system got to change.
You just got shot. You want to talk about it? There we go.
So it looks like they're firing at the crowd.
Threatened me with physical violence when I just wasn't
But like they.
So the impression I get, this is an hour stream, looks pretty mild from what we've seen last summer. Looks like they're just throwing trash at the police officers. Police officers are firing rubber bullets. Looks like some people have gotten hit. Never a good thing, but I'm contrasting this with buildings on fire and people throwing Molotov cocktails at police officers, which may or may not have happened, but I'm just looking at what I see here. We're looking at the raw footage. That's why we're here, as opposed to letting mainstream media pick from this what they want to push, whatever narrative they want to push. So I see graffiti, I see trash being thrown, and people generally just out in the streets. So NBC News showing a guy on the hood of the car. So that is good in terms of they would normally like to hide stuff that makes the rioters or protesters look bad. So here you have a guy on the hood of a police car, so that definitely doesn't make him look good. CBSN shows people with their hands up and smoke everywhere. Looks a little crazier than what we just saw. Washington Post chooses to go with a guy in the car. Fox News, same shot, guy in the car. Minneapolis, Fox News just shows crowd in the dark, really vague. This is saying it was an accidental discharge. I don't know if that's true or not. So apparently there's looting going on, is what they're saying here, which of course there would be. Looting and riots, they take everything. So looks like there's more to the story. We'll see if this, and look at, this is stuff that we picked up pretty quickly, so the media would definitely be aware of this. So if they choose not to cover it, we know why. So it looks like there is looting going on. This is from 17 hours ago.
I see what's going on in here, man. And they taking everything.
So they cleaned out, looks like a T-Mobile store.
Yo, this is crazy.
Another store. All right, so let's just quickly go through and check conservative media, liberal media. So initial expectation is that both left-wing and right-wing media are going to be on top of this. I haven't really read in detail about what happened, but it sounds like there might be some good material for victim blaming on the right. And there could be some good money to be made on the left in terms of it's so close to George Floyd. The George Floyd trial is going on and in the same place. You know, nothing has changed, blah, blah, blah. You know, show the guys, you know, with their hands up, Black Lives Matter, whatever. So it sounds like some good material for them to do their thing to monetize this. So CNN is silent. Okay, of course, MSNBC is on top of this. They got body cam footage. They have the original thing. They dropped a 2-minute video about when he was shot. They did a protest erupt video. The Young Turks are asleep at the wheel. This is something juicy for them. I'm surprised they haven't jumped on it yet, but I'm pretty sure they're going to jump on it by the end of today. David Pakman asleep at the wheel. Brian Tyler Cohen asleep at the wheel, of course. Ring of Fire asleep. Majority Report asleep. Rational National asleep. That's interesting. A lot of these left-wing channels are not covering it yet. So the Post has their deal. Police hold news conference. So this should be interesting to see what the right wing is doing. Fox News is all over it. So they say violent protests erupt. So they focus on the violence. It's interesting that a lot of the media is asleep on this story. I don't know why. You would expect more of them. This is what they do for a living. I got a full-time job and I'm covering this before they are? Wow, not even Blaze TV wants to do their fake outrage about the riots? Tim Pool, of course, I know he's posted something already. He's probably going to do a live stream. There you go, Black Lives Matter. Of course, Steven Crowder, yep. So this is going to be victim blaming, blah, blah, blah. And again, it's not about shooting justified or not. It's just, because that's the thing, it doesn't matter. Whether the shooting is justified or not, Steven Crowder is going to victim blame. If there's anything for him to work with, he's going to victim blame. So he's done another video. Yeah, he loves this. Somebody with brown skin got killed and they're rioting. Yeah. Ben Shapiro, asleep at the wheel. Officer Tatum, asleep at the wheel. Surprised on that one. Project Veritas, sleep at the wheel. Conservative, sleep at the wheel. Rubin, sleep at the wheel. All right. there you have it. This is Debate Me channel. Debate Me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well.